Hello and welcome to the third week of our great fall 2020 semester. I hope everybody's it's doing fine, that you're safe from, the pandemic or the hurricane. So been praying for everybody. Um, I know it's a difficult time for many reasons, but we have to keep plugging, keep, moving up. All right, so the biological person is chapter 3. You see in the modules, I have the instructions, I have the PowerPoint, I have the case study on if you don't have the book yet, which you should have recorded, but you may just want to hear the computer voice. Tell me if you want to change it. I think the voice can be changed. They don't have I was gonna do a joke about changing the voice to somebody famous, but anyway, I think they only have male and female voice, so I'll stick to the default, whatever that is. The podcast, I don't know if you have been listening to the podcast, but let me know how useful that is. And I repeat again about the flashcards. It would be a good help. It is a good help, for the quiz. Do we have quiz? The midterm and the final. Multimedia, of course. And here, again, I'm providing you a PDF of the chapter 3, not the, not the latest version, or I should say edition, but, good enough for now. It may not have the same case studies, but, I'm providing you the case studies. Let's see. There are 2 videos here. I call it video lectures. There's not really my lecturing, but they're really interesting. Now, before I start my actual lecture, I want to sort of turn your attention to this video. The epigenetics. Well, if you're a news junkie, especially for issues of social work like me, you probably have heard what epigenetics stands, or it is. Now, it's not a new concept. It was sort of discovered in the 40s, and it didn't really came into well known until maybe mid 80s, but anyway, it have become really popular recently. And let's get into what is it and what's the relevance to social work. Well, I don't want to spoil the video, but I'll give you a little bit of a preview. So it means that that some trauma could be genetically passed on, from let's say your parents to you, and you to your kids, etc. And it actually affects the the genetic content. It'll alter your genes. For instance, well, let's do this example here. Male children of abused war prisoners were about 10% more likely to die than their peers were in a were in a given year after middle age, you know. So it's kind of a very dark statement, but it doesn't have to be, you know, people who experience war. It's just that, is that the idea that a trauma can leave a chemical mark on, somebody's genes and be passed on, as to your offspring, the children. What does that have? Again, what does it have to do with anything? Well, we should be, discussing, I can't say that the latest, but, like I said, I heard some, like TED Talks, and even, actually, if you Google epigenetics and social work, you can tell that, hey, this one here is from 2013. It's an article. Did I say 13? Yes. This one is 2015. So, there's plenty of, articles. Some of the early ones, I think they come from Britain, but still, is relevant because, we as social workers need to know, how to advocate for our clients, our communities. And, if we have one more tool, so to speak, to sort of prevent trauma from being, genetically passed from one generation to the other, then, we should, jump in the bandwagon, so to speak. And so, but none of us is, well, maybe you at some point may become an expert, who knows. But, it is something. And by the way, I know I'm talking a lot about it, but there's an area in social work that, that you may not have heard of, with I guess it's part of medical social work, which is, social workers working with genetics. And so anyway, I really recommend this video because it not only talks about epigenetics, but just human genetics. And, of course, it is related to our topic this week, the biological person. And with that said, I'm going to start with, the PowerPoint. Okay, so here we go. I'm not gonna, okay, there we go. I'm not gonna just go over the overview. Okay, so this is where I start. So, the biological system. Notice that we're going to be talking about several systems, right? And that's the whole point of this semester and of the book. There are many things that contribute to a person's well-being, right? It could be that, you have some genetic anomaly, or, it some other circumstance that created, a biological situation, your heart, your lungs, liver, brain, etc. So we all need to be very cognizant of, the whole picture, so to speak. All right. So, there's a lot of information and terms which, basically, you can, just read, and you get a better idea. And I'm just going to point, certain things, proximal and dismal, it just, I thought I had, well, some images, but that's my fault. Anyway, but as I was saying, the biological sort of commingles with the psychological, social, and spiritual dimension, which we would be discussing, in the next couple of weeks. The nervous system, we have a lot of things, sorry, I shouldn't use the word things, processes, right, that are, they work without us, having to be involved with it. They're called autonomical, right? It's sort of automatic, we don't have to think that, okay, now I'm going to have my heart, pump, stuff like that, and, how that affects our, behavior, environment, our, etc. Again, why should I be reading, the slides for you or the book? You can just follow along. Reading, that is. By the way, there is a great video about the brain that I selected. I go through, through the process of, sometimes, yes, was the same video I used last year? Yes. But, I went through the process of, selecting one that, that I try my best, that the production value, if you're an avid, media person like me, what that means in terms of good lighting, but also the sound. So, cause, that's important. Cause, let's see. Oops, I jump one slide. Sure, basic concepts of, excuse me, I'm getting hiccups, of anatomy, are basic things that we should know, because you might not be want to become, or maybe, medical social worker, but any social worker should know, minimum facts about, anatomy. And in this case, let's say that you are a child welfare and notice that the child being abused and got hit in the frontal lobe, right? So what could that mean? Well, you got it here, it could affect the language, time, again, temporal lobe. It's not necessarily hard if you sort of think and attribute some sort of, frontal lobe in front, right? Temporal, well, you have your temple right next to your ear, right? And that's language. Notice that there might be some overlap here. So memory, emotions, the parietal lobe. I know that word or term could be harder to remember, but at least not everything is hard to remember. So that's the intellectual process. So if the child, let's say you're or the adult for that matter, but that would be maybe a domestic violence incident. Somebody got hit here, you would know that, okay, this is this kind of things, right? Or symptoms, and I'm doing air quotes, but you're not seeing them, that you should be looking for. So it's quite relevant. The occipital lobe, is this one on the back. I don't know. I mean, I know a little bit of late Latin, and so occipital, I understand that it's sort of on that side or on the back. So it's not hard for me to it is easy to remember where it is by the name. But think about this is a very a place that for either intentional or unintentional reason, we may be hit here, right? It's in the back of our head, and what it does affect vision. I don't know if do you have any personal or brother, father, your mother, etc., sister, friend, have ever been hit there and like whoa, I see stars. You remember that, right? From the cartoons, or even, oh, I'm seeing stars. Well, maybe that's what's happening there. I'm gonna, I'm gonna move on. The cerebellum and the brainstem. We're gonna talk about that in more detail later. So, nervous system. So we have, I know, sounds like chemistry and high level biology, but you need to know all of these terms as a social worker. Dopamine, does it sound familiar? So, we have, you need to know, actually, for your licensure and other training, what does dopamine sort of do, right? It's a neurotransmitter, and it inhibit neurotransmitter. So it is one of those that in like a trauma, maybe physical, if it inhibits, it's sort of quote unquote protecting you. So because you're getting so bombarded with trauma, like I said, physical or not physical, and it is a sort of a protector agent in your brain or in your neurons, really. And then it's saying, this is high alert. Maybe we should provide something to this is like you have a person inside, I'm talking, and sort of saying, okay, dopamine to the rescue, right? Now, norepinephrine influence emotional behavior. Well, you may get that, like, why do I cry on TV commercials, right? Well, maybe that's the reason, and, I'm not going to get into serotonin. Yes, it's very important also because it's also an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Well, think about what I just said, right? The ones that maybe I'm biased because I deal more specialized in child welfare, so I hear dopamine more. But anyway, serotonin, especially when we're talking about like medicines, you say, SSIs, well, you need to know that for serotonin, relation to serotonin, right? And, I want to make this, like always, a short video, so I can, and I'm just in the, sorry about that, on the 8th slide. So here is where, the sort of the figure for how the neurotransmitters you sort of communicate, right? So we have this neuron communicating to other one. So it's sort of it is a network of neurons, and so that like I said, you can just read the slide. I'm going to skip that. This is your hormones, right? Right, the endocrine systems. We all heard about hormones, and we all have them, and they play a very significant role in our biology, from metabolism, learning, etc. Um, you know, we have, obviously for males, obviously for females, at least biological females, and then, adrenal. What does that sound like? Adrenaline, right? Fight or flight, right? Etc. The excuse me, the pituitary gland, well, obviously this for moms, but stimulate cell, if somebody have problem with any, well, some of this hormones, that's why you say, well, maybe that's the reason that the person grew too much or didn't grow enough, which relates to, a lot of development, right? Again, you see this exhibit here, and, it does affect, us socially, right? Let me be frank, if if a male, doesn't develop, growth too much, he may get teased or bullied. And, I'm just giving you one example. There's hundreds, thousands more. Or if the female, develop breasts too early, well, you kind of know where I'm going there. Or it affects, other dimensions, right? Which is the point I'm trying to make. Yeah, this is just related to the case studies. By the way, let me just tell you something. Even though I said pick one of the six, you if you feel like I want to write a little more, or something like that, pick a second one, too. Okay, the immune system. About the white blood cells, sometimes called the sort of, police in the blood, because it fights infections, sort of, they're willing to die for our protection. When you get pus, right? That pus, that horrible thing you sometimes get, those are, well, some are just white blood cells that have died, protecting us. We have the bone marrow, the lymph nodes, the spleen, who knows what that, no, I'm kidding, what spleen does. So it's to protect us from, infection, sometimes, our on our skin, right? Like if we, get caught with something, and sometimes it is internal. Because, we breathe and eat and things that, may cause us harm. Anyway, I'm not gonna necessarily go again. This is related to the case studies. Okay, this is an obviously major biological system, because, again, I'm not going to shy away from the elephant in the room. And we live in a state that cardiovascular diseases are rampant, but, although I can also say we live in a country that cardiovascular systems are, off the chart, right? And what are the social issues or social implications, or environmental reasons for, having such a high level of heart problems, right? Strokes, heart attacks, etc. Well, maybe it's, we always attack, so to speak, fast food. Well, it is kind of true, right? Too much carbs, too much uh, um, fat, etc. Not enough exercise. So, there are parasympathetic activities, that slow the heart rate, and sympathetic, activities that associated with stress. Stress is not always bad because, remember the adrenaline and then you heart pump, they all work together to either flight or fight. You hear those stories that the mom of the dad was able to lift a car from the kid who was trapped, all of those stories. Well, it have to do with, our nervous system, our cardiovascular system, our hormone system, all of those things. I'll just move along. Yeah, I know that we may not be that excited about, going deep in the anatomy, but, understand basic, which is just basic anatomy concept. For the sake of time, you can read it. I'm pausing it on this slide enough so you can hear what the arteries do, right? Have to do with the delivering oxygen, right? So, where do we get the oxygen? Well, obviously from outside, right? The air, but it goes to the lungs, and in the lungs, our blood gets that oxygen, and then it goes back, gets to the heart, and then our brain. Our brain cannot live without oxygen, and the oxygen comes, or is transported, I should say, by blood. Capillaries, right? Where they are. I don't see those in the diagram, but anyway, and veins, move the blood from the capillaries to the heart, and the arteries, it's the kind of the opposite. So that's how you know the difference. So the veins move blood from the capillaries to the heart, and the arteries sort of go in the different direction. You can follow, the arrows, and understand, there's you know just some muscle, right? So, oops, I didn't mean to do that. And if there's fat here, well, it may impede the contractions, right? And it's a blockage here. Well, those are pipes. We usually talk about pipes like, oh, that person has good pipes because he's a singer. But yes, that's true. But these are also some of our pipes that we need to keep, free and unclogged. Okay. This is again another related to the case study. Not because you're doing only one. You should, look into all of them, obviously. I mean, you only have to do the discussion for one. All right, let's keep going. Musculoskeletal system. Well, muscles and bones. The muscles help move your bones. In many occasions, it's also protect, right? The bones. If you didn't have your ribs, what it would, it's a protection for your heart and your lung. The skull, that, your skull protects the brain. Said that. Excuse me. Provide motion. Anything. Let me move. Yeah. Anything. For instance, you have heard the term bursitis. Well, usually, that itis means inflammation, right? So think if this piece here, the bursa, this here, gets inflamed. Don't you think that that will affect the mechanics of how your knee move, right? I'm just saying it could. I'm not saying that there's no bursitis in other places, but this looks like a knee. Well, it is because I see the patella here, which anyway. And then you have this cartilage, which is sort of like, probably maybe using the wrong term, but sort of protecting that there is a contact between bone and bone. You know what? When there's contact and this cartilage gets sort of destroyed or removed by use, well, then you get bone to bone, and that is called arthritis, or a form of arthritis, right? Yeah, I'm gonna just leave it there for the sake of time. Again, you see how in every sort of section in this chapter is connected to a case study. Okay, the reproductive system. Again, we have andro, sort of man, and testosterone for males, and progesterone and estrogen for females. And they have, well, multiple implications. And I know we're serious people, so we're going to treat this as adults, right? We have the female external organs, right? You can do your own reading here. Why do we, as social workers? Well, I don't have to tell you that there's a lot of abuse that involves this area, right? So, it's a good idea to know at least the. Oh, I'm sorry for the males. I actually jumped this one, which is the male reproductive system. Some major parts is the prostate gland, right? That's, you see, you can see what happens if it grows, right? Well, it will push against the bladder, push against here, anyway, anything that sort of grows more than it should be, as the size, will affect what is all the organs and muscles and etc. that are close to it. Let's see if there's anything. Well, you can read it. I stopped enough time for you to read this line. Then, this is the internal sex organs, right? The ovaries, the fallopian tube, the uterus, if you deal with children or adolescents, you need to talk to them. And I understand, maybe as a female, you may know more of this, but you may not know, the male organs as well. I'm not saying that anything necessarily. That's not a statement. That's just a comment that, but if you're, a male social worker, you need to be, or know at least the minimum in terms of anatomy. We have here, I'm just going to mention this, the endometrium. You heard of endometriosis, right? It's quite common. So imagine if what happened is that the tissue here becomes very, very tight and hard, and besides being painful, think that if obstruct, the lining here, when menstruation, before menstruation, I should say, we have that lining of nutrients, right? The blood, and then, the ovaries, sorry, the eggs, right, comes down and they get implanted here, and then the sperm comes in. So imagine if this, area gets, rigid and hard, and, there's pain. Obviously, it would make this area a little, or somewhat tighter, right? But it affects the whole lining here, Anyway, it's a long story to say that it affects fertility, and it's quite common. It affects women as young as, I don't know, 16, or maybe even way younger than that. So as a social worker, depending on, what work you do, you're going to have to become familiar with endometriosis. Yeah, and, sexual issues, for teenagers, and STI, sexual transmitted diseases. We all need to know at least the basics of that. Then, the genetics. I'm going to not necessarily skip this, but you can watch the video, which it will do a much better job than I can do. Again, there's one about the brain, and there's one that I highly recommend about genetics and epigenetics. Yes, the interaction between socioeconomic environment and interior of the health. I kind of talked about that because, environmental exposures. You may be close to a factory, so air pollution, also, garbage, trash is not picked every two, whatever, in my case it's twice a week, but, anyway, things like that. Environmental, exposure to stress, I don't know that I have to explain that. And also, how well informed you are, or we are, about, health factors. Trust me, we have become quite educated, I should say, in health issues, especially during this pandemic, right? And wow, we need to, every day almost seems like something has changed. So, as advocates and people who are helping the less underserved, I should say, and or people with underheard, right? People, and like people like us, brown and black, who are more likely to be, suffering from not only the coronavirus, but many other factors. So yes, the social economic factors do get under our skin, literally, right? And this is the implications for social work, which again, I'm not going to read for you, and it continues here. They're also in the book. With that, I'm actually going to stop because I already ran longer than I should, but I know I spoke a little bit of some logistical issues at the beginning, which you can argue that, well, the more or the time I spend doing that, I don't have to spend, or save you time, right? And so, I see it as a win-win. And having said that, I better stop before, stop my yapping. By the way, everything else before was educational. Now I'm just blabbering, which, it's what I do sometimes at the end. But, let me finish by again saying, be very careful, because, issues like the coronavirus, etc., really can really they're really sometimes invisible. We can't tell, and you know, even if we do our best, sometimes we get sick. But you know, don't leave your guard down. That's all I'm saying. All right, and I hope that nobody was affected by the hurricane and the floods. So if any of your family, friends, other loved ones have been affected, let's do something about it, right? We can move. There's social. Yes, we cannot go places as easy as before, but there's social media. Even if we, you know, it's not necessarily have to be monetary, right? We have stuff that we may not be using, or stuff that we are using, but we're fine with sharing those, right? Anyway, keep being the good human beings that you are, and keep up, keeping love as a high priority in everything. All right. So I say bye bye, adios, arrivederci, sayonara, and just plain bye.